Hello everyone, good morning. This is Dr. Bijendra. I'm going to explain today PSIR optional paper 1 which has been conducted on Sunday, and I hope you must have seen the question. Today we will discuss its analysis, basically what should be, how you should write answers to the particular questions. Let me tell you 1, 2, 3 things, that all the questions which there is in the question paper that has come from the notes, class notes which I taught. I teach political science and international relations as an optional paper at Plutus IAS, right? So total you have a set of 8 questions and you have to do 5 out of 8 questions. First questions and 5th questions is mandatory that you have to attempt, and the rest you have to do, but at least one question you have to attempt from the both the sections. So let's come to see the questions here. So question is divided in 2 sections, section A and section B. So section A covers Western political thought, political theory and Indian political thought. Section 2 covers Indian government and politics. Now see the section 1A, first question, which has 5 sub questions, and the first question is feminist critique of the state. The first question is asking feminist critique of the state. How one should attempt this question? It is asking feminist critique of the state. So there are many variations of feminism, right? There is liberal feminism, there are socialist feminism, there are radical feminism. How each variant of feminism criticizing the state, right? State, right? So first we have to explain what is a feminism, and then we have to come to criticize the feminist critique. So first we will discuss the what liberal feminist talks about criticize state, right? So liberal feminists criticize state that it has kept women out from the public sphere. It has it has not given a right to equality, and it has not given a right to property and right to vote, right? And for example, Harriet Mill, Mary Wollstonecraft, J.S. Mill, right? So they are talking about women should get equal right to vote, right to property, right, to the as per man. So their criticism is state is basically for man in terms of right to civil and political rights. Women are deprived of right to vote, right to property. Now second one is socialist feminism, right? Socialist feminism. How socialist feminism criticize state? And socialist feminist talks about that the property which is very much inherent in the family on the name of man. So man not only captured property, but it also captured the woman. And state, which is a capitalist state, it is not only exploiting the workers, but it is exploiting also women. Why? Because in the capitalist state, property is captured by the capitalists. right? So women are exploited in the capitalist state, that is socialist critique of the state. Third, radical feminist. What radical feminists talk about criticizing state? Radical feminists argued that the entire history of political theory is divided into public sphere and private sphere. In the public sphere, state has intervened and made laws and regulation to govern the public sphere. But what about private sphere, which is a family, right? It has left family on its own. But family is a roots of patriarchy, it is a roots of power, unequal power structure, and it is a roots of exploitation. So state has only concentrated on a public sphere, and it has denied private sphere, like that is family. And then they called for personal is political, that a state should intervene in the private sphere, that is family. So that is the three criticism: radical feminist, socialist feminist, and liberal feminist. So all three perspectives we should put in this. Only 150 words, so we have to be limit. We should not demonstrate our scholarship. Now come to the affirmative action. Right? What is affirmative action? Affirmative action is a positive discrimination towards the vulnerable communities, right? It is called preferential treatment in US. So it is a state policy to look after socially and educationally vulnerable community like SC, ST, women in India, right? But if you talk about US, where black is deprived community, vulnerable community, so affirmative action talks about that state should take positive action regarding vulnerable community. What are the positive action state can take through the affirmative action? One is, the state can give constitutional protection. Constitutional protection. Then state can give, representation in state legislature and parliament. So representation can be given. Like in India, there is a reservation of SC, ST in the state assembly and the parliament. Then third, welfare schemes can be, formulated by the state. So welfare schemes as a affirmative action. Then there should be a law. Why law? Because that law should protect that vulnerable community. For example, if you talk about SC, ST, there is a SC, ST Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989. For example, right? Apart from law, there are commission. Like a commission for SCs, commission for ST. So these all are the positive policy, positive discrimination as towards the vulnerable community. That is affirmative action conceptually. What Mark Galanter here is very important. Mark Galanter talks about, it is a compensatory discrimination. It means state is compensating to the vulnerable community. Okay, so that is the affirmative action. Now come to the next question. Equality of outcome as a political ideas, right? So basically this is a socialist idea, right? You must have gone through political ideology. What liberals talks about? For liberals, equality means equality of opportunity. But for socialists, equality means outcome as a political idea. Equality means social equality, economic equality, right? So this is socialist idea. Why equality of outcome? Because as a equality of outcome, we can ensure equity, we can ensure social justice. And if we can ensure social justice, we can ensure social solidarity in a community, right? So basically this is a Marxist idea, or you can say the welfarist idea, because liberal also incorporated, you know, equality of outcome, you know, as a concept. So welfare liberals also talks about equality of outcome. For example, if you look at Article 16, which talks about, you know, equality in public employment, but read Article 16.4, 16.5, right, 16.6, which talks about a special representation or special provisions for socially and educationally backward community. State can formulate. Why state can formulate? Because we want equality of outcome rather than equal opportunity. Equal opportunity should be there, but there should be equality of outcome for liberals. But for Marxists, equality of outcome means social equality, economic equality, right? So that is the third question. We should treat like that. Now come to the fourth, tools of legitimation of the state. Now here see how state establishes its legitimacy. What are the tools that the question is asking? What are the tools through which state establishes its legitimacy? Here you can see the Marxian concept. You can put Gramscian notion of hegemony, right? State needs legitimacy, and there are various ground on legitimacy. For example, election. Election is one instrument or tools to get legitimacy, to take the consent of the people, right? Secondly, you know, media is a very important tools for the state in order to seek legitimacy. So what the state does, state, you know, propagate its idea, right? Third is propaganda. State also do propaganda to seek legitimacy, right? Then apart from it, you know, there are institutions, right? For example, legislature, like executive and judiciary, that also are the tools for the state to seek legitimacy. For example, if state, you know, Supreme Court gives a verdict, you know, people consider it, you know, it is a very judicious verdict given by the court, right? So these are the tools for the state. Now come to the next. The J.S. Mill ideas on woman suffrage. Let me tell you, J.S. Mill was a first author who wrote on subjection of woman, first male, let me tell you. But before J.S. Mill, Mary Wollstonecraft had already written on, you know, subjection of woman or deprivation of woman in the society. J.S. Mill wrote his book Subjection of Woman, and his wife Harriet Taylor Mill wrote a text that is called Enfranchisement of Woman, where J.S. Mill, you know, advocated right to equality, civil and political right to women with respect to man, and he said that women should get equality in terms of political sphere. Not only political sphere, women should get you know, education, equal opportunity in education, equal opportunity in economy, right? But especially the Harriet Taylor Mill, who wrote Enfranchisement of Women, she talks about women's suffrage, and the entire movement of liberal liberal feminists were for the right to vote, right? And what J.S. Mill talks about, women universal adult franchise should be opted and given to everyone, including women, right? And it can liberate, it can bring equality in the society. That is the basic idea of the J.S. Mill on women's suffrage in his book Subjection of Woman, and the Harriet Taylor Mill's work, that is enfranchisement of women. So these are the question number 1, where you have 5 questions and you have to write very short notes on 150 words. Now afterwards you get many questions, 2, 3 and 4 in the first. Now at least you have to solve one. At least you have to solve one. Right. Here we will discuss each question separately. So now let's see the question number 2. Here it talks about how has Rawls enriched the idea of justice in liberalism. First you have to identify in the political ideology like liberalism who talks about justice, right? So first you have to identify first like Jeremy Bentham and especially J.S. Mill who talks about justice, right? And for Mill or for Bentham, it was greatest happiness to the greatest number, right? Apart from it, the new liberals like Hayek and Milton Friedman, who talks about justice in terms of liberty, right? There should be liberty to everyone, and there should be no state intervention. And they did not consider equality as a something. No, liberty should be the prior to the equality. Now, if you look at the John Rawls, who rejected both, who rejected the utilitarian notions of justice as proposed by Bentham and J.S. Mill, and they also rejected the idea of neoliberals who talked about liberty as a sole criteria, liberty and rights, right to property as a sole criteria to establish a society, a free society, right? But here Rawls make a combination between liberty and equality. Let me come here. Rawls talks about liberty and equality. So you can see the fusion of liberty and equality in Rawlsian theory of justice, right? But if you look at the other like Bentham or Hayek, neoliberals, they were separated. Now if you look at the Rawlsian theory, what Rawls talks about? Rawls talks about all resources, all primary goods should be distributed equally, right? Like opportunity, like liberty, like social wealth, social honor, everything should be distributed equally, unless an unequal distribution should benefit to the least advantaged. Mind it, he is in favor of equal distribution of all resources, all primary goods, wealth, opportunity, rights, liberty, social honor should be distributed equally. But if it is benefit to the least well off, then we should go for unequal distribution. Now, and he said, his theory of justice is based on principle of fairness. And what is fairness? He said in original position. What is original position? Original position where there was no government, right? So in original position, everyone come together and opt his principle of justice, and that is in lexical order. And what is that principle? The first principle is liberty principle, right? And he said all individuals should have equal right to equal liberty to the most extensive system, and that should be available to all, right? And secondly, he said all social and economic inequality are to be arranged in such a manner that the greatest benefits should go to the least advantage, and the office and position should be open under the fair equality of opportunity for all. That is two principles he has given, and he said first principle should be followed first, and then second principle should be followed second. That's in lexical order. Now if you see the here Rawlsian idea, he just enriched the idea of liberalism, what Bentham and Hayek, neoliberals, was talking about. He is proposing a fusion of liberty and equality, and that is called social liberalism, right? His version of liberalism is called social liberalism, right? But if you talk about Bentham, that's called neoliberals, classical liberals. But if you talk about Hayek and Milton Friedman, Robert Nozick, they are called the new liberals. So between classical liberals, new liberals, he has positioned a new idea that is called social liberals. The idea of human development is based on the Rawlsian idea, right? And he influenced many scholars, but he was also criticized by Robert Nozick, who proposed entitlement theory of justice, and he criticized John Rawls as a proposer of pattern theory of justice. So that is the entire story that you have to write, with different journey of justice in liberalism, and then you have to locate the Rawls. So that is the point you need to write. The next question is, examine the importance of behavioral approach in political theory, what led to its decline. Now if you see the behavioral approach to the political theory, the behavioral approach developed basically after the Second World War, and that behavioral movement emerged in US, and that had lots of impact, not only political theory but all social science discipline, right? What was the behavioral approach? Behavioral approach was influenced from the positivism, and that talks about empirical method to study social science or social phenomena. And they talk about we can make every social science value free. Mind it, the political theory is not a value free, but it is a value laden, like justice. That we can make a judgment or we can analyze justice, but we cannot quantify justice, right? But the behavioral approach try to quantify, right? Try to systematically arrange mathematical data around of all the social sciences, including political theory. And they argued behavioral approach that we should observe all social phenomena. First we should observe all social phenomena, and after observation we should make a systematic arrange the data, and once you have arranged the data, then you can generalize the thing, right? You can verify your knowledge, right? You can. So these are the all that is the importance of the behavioral in political theory. And David Stern, right? David Stern was its proposer in political science, and he said there should be eight quantity, or 8 factors that should be looked at to study any social phenomena. That systematization, quantifiable, verifiable, etc. So there are 8 factors he talked about. Now when there was so much behavioral movement in social science, including in political theory, what led to its decline? Now the same thinker, David Stern, observed that where we are going, and we are making something, we are destructing the knowledge system, right? We are moving towards the value and judgment. What is relevance? What is relevance of this study, right? That's, he raised the question. Secondly, he said, what is the value, right? If we extract value from the social science, then what left? Nothing, right? And we are making very, in a wrong direction. So he said that relevance and relevance, and secondly value we are missing from the analyzing the social science including political theory, and that led to its decline, and he again called for post-behavioralism, and that post-behavioralism focused on relevance and value. That is the entire story things. Now the next question, can there be a universal conception of human rights? Give your arguments. So here it's asking universal conception of human rights. Now if you look at the human being, it's so dynamic around the world, right? The different ethnicity, different religion, different language, different race, different caste, different culture, etc. Lots of diversity around the world. Is it possible to make a very argumentative theory about universal conception of human rights? The first attempt was made by UNGA, United Nations General Assembly, to declare a set of rights as a universal concept of human rights. In the background of brutality, lots of brutality was done by the state authority during the First World War, and Hitler is one example. So UNGA on 10th of December 1948 declared UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Right, which consists preamble and 30 articles, and it preambles recognizes equal worth for human being irrespective of all the diversities and differences that exist in human around the globe, right? So it recognizes equal human worth and peace for human being and some basic liberty and justice for everyone. Now if you see the article 1 to 30, here article 1 and 2 defines basic principles of the human rights, which talks about all human beings have been created equal and they have equal free and have equal worth. Secondly, it says irrespective of differences in race, caste, religion, ethnicity, language, etc., all human beings are equal. Now if you talk about article 3 to 22, which talks about, or 27, it talks about civil and political rights, right? Civil and political rights that many has been also included in the Indian Constitution. And if you see the article 28 to 30, which talks about circumstances under which an individual can exercise basic human rights. Now here the question is, then there are differences in humanity, but yes, there should be a universal concept of human rights, and there are some basic rights, right? Basic economic rights, basic property rights, basic cultural rights, basic liberty that should be available to everyone, right? And what Upendra Bakshi talks about, rights of being human, because since we are a human being, certain rights should be preserved to every human being, irrespective of fact that there are differences in humanity, there are differences in human population. So that should be the thing here for the second question number second and C. Now come to the question number third A. Now here the question is, explain the Aristotelian view of politics. It's not talking about Aristotle's view of politics, Aristotelian view of politics. And then to what extent do you think it has contributed to development of modern day constitutional democracy? If you look at the Aristotle, which talks about three basic things. One is, the all equal citizen has to participate. So he talks about participation in democracy. And he said, it is very necessary, for each individual, each citizen to participate, to hold public office, to hold administrative office, participate in decision making process, So they should. And secondly, he talks about deliberation. Deliberation is a very important aspect in Aristotelian view of politics. And what he said, every citizen should gather and discuss, debate on the basis of logic, on the basis of rationality, right? And they discuss what is worth for the state, because the state is an association of associations, and it is the highest institution in civilization, right? And we need a state, right? Because it helps you in development of your personality, right? Development, highest personality you can achieve in only living in state, right? So that's his view. Third things, he talks about rule of law. So I'm treating the first part, rule of law, Aristotelian view of politics. Rule of law, for Aristotle, rule of law is very, very important. He said law is supreme, not the person, right? Law is the wisest, right? Law is wiser than the wisest man, because it is all person through the participation and deliberation they have made the law. So law should be, law in the form of constitution, law in the form of any bill or any act. So law is very important for any state. That is Aristotelian politics major view. Now, what extent do you think it has contributed to development of modern day constitutional democracy? If you look at Aristotle, who studied 158 constitution, and that is why Aristotle is called father of constitutionalism, right? And if you see the modern day constitution, whether US constitution or Indian constitution, and if you look at this 3 point is there, the 3 point you can find here in either Indian constitution or the US constitution. So participation. So if you look at the constitutional polity of the US, participation is secured, yeah? Right to vote has been given, right? And there are different layers of government in India where participation is there. Then second is deliberation, which has been secured through, like in India, like in a state there are a state legislature, which is a deliberative body, like parliament, which is a deliberative body, right? So it stands for deliberation on the basis of rationality, logic, right? And it stands for discuss, debate, contemplation on different matters, right? Now rule of law is very important for modern day constitutional democracy. If you see the constitutional making of the India's constitution, the constitutional framework, or you see the US constitution, it was the constitutional framework, right, constitutional maker who made the constitution, which is more democratic and based on rule of law rather than rule of hierarchy or rule of monarch or rule of oligarchy, whatever. So the modern day constitution is based on the idea of Aristotle idea, like citizenship. Like citizenship also was his own concept. So that is the thing there we should mention in the answer. Now the 3B, the next question, the question goes like this: when a nation becomes devoid of arts and learning, it invites poverty. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. In the light of this statement, assess the role of the Sir Syed Ahmad Khan as a reformer, right? Just it is asking how he was a reformer. If you look at Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, he was a leader, he was an educationist, he was a leader of enlightenment, he was a reformer, social reformer, right? And Sir Syed Ahmad Khan was a very rational person. He was a bureaucrat, he was a teacher, right? And he was a loyalist to the British government, British authority, right? Why he was a, he was modern? Because he used to say, he said that in one hand there should be Quran and on other hand there should be science, the book of science. So he was very much in favor of science and arts, and he also said that the Hadith and Quran should be interpreted. And he said, the many various elements of Quran and Hadith are very similar to Christianity, right? And he was very much attracted by the modernity, especially science and technology. And he established a few newspaper, right? And he also established Anglo-Oriental College that was later converted as Aligarh Muslim University. And he also, All India Educational Conference he established, through which he, propagated education. So his statement, this statement, a nation becomes when there is no art and no learning, when there is no education, modern education, right? And then, this country, any country becomes a devoid, and he said that he was against of the wealth system, Parda Partha, right? He was against the wealth system, and he said that the Islam should opt modernity, embrace modernity, right? And he established many institutions. He wrote many newspaper, magazines in favor of social reform and political reform. He was great votary of India Hindu-Muslim unity also, right? So he was a pioneer of Islamic reform in India, pioneer of Islamic reform in India, right? Now let's come to the next question. Here the next question, third C, it goes like this: political ideology is primarily concerned with allocation and utilization of power. Now you see, political ideology, what is it? First you need to define what is political ideology, and then you have to define, okay, it is a political creed, right? And it is a different, perspective to look the world, right? So there are different political ideology like liberalism, right? Like meta-political ideology, like liberalism, like socialism, right? So these are like feminism, these are also meta-political ideology, right? And which is concerned allocation and utilization of power. If you talk about liberalism, it talks about, freedom of individual, and and that what Marx talks about, capitalist exploitation. So liberalism also give equality and rights, basically rights and freedom to individual. And if you see the evolution of liberalism, it supported capitalist economy, and which labeled by socialists as a exploitation of man, right? So because it had captured the economic power of the state. And secondly, when you see the socialism, it criticized the capitalist economy, but at the same time it proposed for dictatorship of the proletariat, right? So when dictatorship of the proletariat, also one kind of capture the power, and utilization of power, allocation and utilization of power, right? So Marx not only criticized liberals, but liberal as an ideology, political ideology, they established another set of ideology, an alternative ideology, which was also for the allocation and utilization of power. If you talk about feminism, feminism is also meta-political ideology like liberalism and socialism. Now if you talk about feminist, they also talks about different notion of power, right? Different notion of power, especially radical feminist who talks about personal is political and talks about how power is structured within the family, right? And the entire political discourse is divided between private sphere and public sphere, and the government, the state, is concentrating or intervening only in the public sphere, right, in order to govern the public sphere, and it considered private is a something personal which should not be intervened by the state. But actually it is a family, which is a private sphere, which is a sphere of power structure between man and woman. A family in which, you know, there is exploitation, there is a hierarchy, so state must intervene. So here you can see the feminist also talks about allocation and utilization of power, right? So different liberal political ideology talks about different kind of allocation and utilization of power. That's enough, I think that's enough, you know, it would be more than 200 words. So now next is fourth question. Now if you see the fourth question, fourth A goes like this. Do you think that the Buddhist traditions have lent greater ethical foundation to the ancient Indian political thought? Give your argument. So here talking about Buddhist tradition in relation to Indian political thought, who had greater ethical value basically, right? But Indian political thought, the ancient Indian political thought, right, if you see, it is dominated by dharma, right? It is dominated by dharma, danda. Two things is a primary in ancient Indian political thought. One is danda and one is dharma, right? And the philosopher of the ancient Indian political thought focused on, you know, the incarnate, paraloka. Paraloka means the next birth, or the another world beyond this world. Now if you look at the Buddhist tradition, which is come as a critical to the ancient Indian political thought, which was based on Brahmanical social and political order, or the concept of dharma, which was particularly a Brahmanical based on caste system, right? So the Buddhist tradition, rejected the idea of paraloka and gave the concept of ihiloka. That means there is no something another world. This is the real world that we are living in. Secondly, the Buddhist tradition also, rejected the cosmic power that was believed by the Brahmins, and they said that there is no cosmic power, and they rejected also the human sacrifice, right, or animal sacrifice. In the Brahminical tradition, there was so much of yagya, havana, and in that there was so much of sacrifice, and the Buddhist, Buddha rejected the idea. The ancient Indian political thought was based on a social order, varnasrama dharma, right? And that varnasrama dharma was also focused on the birtha, the notion of birtha, which was very important. But if you see the Buddhist tradition, which talks about not birtha but karma, and then he said the karma is a real rather than birtha. The man worth depends on not depends on the birtha, but it depends on the karma. And then if you talk about ethical foundation, it was larger. Why it is larger? The Buddhists said there are something called dukkha, right? There are dukkha, there are sorrowness. And why dukkha? There are desire. So, and what should be the solution? So if we leave the desire, live in renunciation, right? And we follow the Ashtamarga, right? So like truth, non-violence, and samyak drishti, to looking someone with unpartitioned, unbiased manner. These, were the ethical foundation, and he gave concept of nirvana. That concept given nirvana. So if you look at the ethical foundation of ancient political thought, Buddha has more may call egalitarian value. If you see the ancient political thought, the Brahmin or the political thought which was established by Manu, Brihaspati, Kautilya, that was based on hierarchy. But here the Buddhist tradition focused on civic equality. I should not use the term the equality, right? It was a more kind of egalitarian society, right? So that was the thing, that his Buddhist tradition ethical foundation was larger, and it was more benefit to everyone. Now fourth B, question number 4B talks about, it goes like that: Marx concept of alienation is an essential part of reality in capitalism, explain. So it's a very simple question. It's asking his concept of alienation. Marx thinks about, that human freedom is an essence, right? And it has two important components. Every human being has two essential values. One is freedom, and second is work, that is creativity. And he said the capitalism has deprived the workers from freedom and work, creativity, right? And in the process of production process in capitalism, human being alienated in a process wise. So he gave four stage of alienation. One is alienation from the product. So in capitalism, the labor has no control over the product, and then they are alienated from the product. Secondly, alienation from the labor process, right? Since human being, workers has no control on the labor production process, because it is a machine which directs or commands the control of the labor process. So workers also alienated from the labor process. Third, alienation from human being, right? Sometimes he goes to the work and come to the work, right? And in that process he is alienated from the society. And the fourth, alienation from self. So in the production process, human being engaged or workers engaged in such a manner that they consider they only remain as an animal, right? So they eat, they bark, that means they become angry, they weep, right? And the animal functions they do, they fill their stomach, but their creativity and freedom lost in the process. So entire capitalist process is a deprivation of freedom and work, and creativity, and workers becomes like animal, right, who lives their subsistence life. So that is his idea of alienation. The next question is for C. Free and fair deliberation is key to the foundation of democracy. Explain. Now, free and fair deliberation is key to the foundation of democracy. Now, if you look at the word deliberation, and then in other word we can say debate, discussion, contemplation. Deliberation is very important in any democracy. Look at the ancient Athenian democracy, in which Aristotle talks about how deliberation, right, open deliberation, a deliberation based on free and fairness, a deliberation which is based on rationality, a deliberation which is based on logic, is very important for for any democratic state. Now look at the modern nation state which evolved. It evolved through some institution like parliament, right? So parliament is a deliberative body, like a state legislature. It is a deliberative body, right? So free and fair deliberation is necessary. Otherwise, it is the executive and other organ of the government which can rise and which can deprive the democracy, which can make democracy very executive and judicial, rather than democracy in a real sense. So there are many thinkers who talks about, for example, J.S. Mill. J.S. Mill talks about a free and fair deliberation is a key to any democracy, right? So deliberation is very necessary for any democracy, right? Now the next question, I'll move to the section B. In the section B, we have question number 5th, which is compulsory, which is mandatory to do. And in the 5th question, there are 5 sub-questions. The first question is, the Constitution of India is a product of historical process, rich with constitutional antecedents. This is a very simple question. It is asking. Now, if you look at the Constitution of India, it has not come accidentally. There are historical background of the Indian Constitution, right? So there are so many acts, Charter Act, Government of India Act, right, before making the Indian Constitution. If you look at the Indian Constitution, out of 395 article, 200 article, more than 200 articles has been borrowed from Government of India Act 1935, and even the Government of India Act was not accidental. It has lots of background, like Government of India Act 1919, and which has Government of India Act 1909, right? So the Parliamentary Reform. And then before that there are lots, and it started in 1773, right? So there are lots of journey. The constitution making process was was taking place. It is a purely historical method. It was not an accident. And if you look at the Indian Constitution, the very much like post of governor, the residuary power, many things like emergency provisions, the list 1, list 2, list 3, schedule 7 schedule, many things have been adopted from the Government of India Act 1935. So it has a journey, particularly it has a historical process, right, and it has also reached with the constitutional antecedents rather than it is an accidental, right? So that is you have to write. It is a very simple question, and at the same time Indian Constitution was also influenced by the other constitutions like US, Japan, Canada, UK, etc. But it was asking how Constitution was, had journeyed in its framing. The next question come to again on the Indian Constitution. Many questions on Indian Constitution. Very good. The Constitution makers face the great task of forging a common national identity in the face of unparalleled social and cultural diversity in India. Comment. Now, if you look at the Constitution maker, great task of forging common national identity, right? And here you need to start with Ambedkar's statement that the first and foremost things that we want liberty, equality and fraternity, right, in Indian democratic value. And since there was a lot of diversity in terms of race, caste, religion, right, ethnicity, language, etc., the constitution maker forced on, placed their faith on common citizenship. Common citizenship. Right, and they secured some called fundamental rights, the set of rights that they secured for everyone, irrespective of differences. So there was a fundamental right, and that rights has given against the state, again the DPSP, right? It was a direction to the state to do welfare, in the through making different kind of policies, state policies, right? And what these 2 points, the fundamental right and DPSP, was called conscience of the constitution by Granville Austin. And Granville Austin talks about also that the Indian constitution is a social document. Why it is social document? Because if you see the Indian constitution, it is a revolutionary. It was a revolutionary steps. Why it was a revolutionary step? Because a society who was so much unequal in terms of a caste, in terms of gender, in terms of regional variation and ethnicity, that made equal by the constitution, and that was the common national identity, and that was the scientific citizenship that Indian constitution maker sought to establish in the Indian constitution. Now come to the question number 3. Mention the founding principle that defines India's constitution. Here the founding principle you can see from your preamble. So very preamble, then founding principle was fundamental rights and DPSP. And you can see founding principle was article 325, right, and 326, which provides universal adult franchise, right? So preamble, like with preamble said we the people of India, right, and authorizes people of India as a source of authority and legitimacy, right, and it constitutes India as a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, right, and it constitutes, it ensures liberty, equality, justice, right, and fraternity and unity and integrity. And it also had given a set of fundamental rights and DPSP, and that was the conscience of the Indian constitution, and it also established universal adult franchise. And these were the founding principle of the India's constitution, like a secular country, a democratic country, a republic country, right? Now come to the next. Analyze the Marxist perspective of the nature of Indian nationalism, national movement. If you see the Marxist perspective, so it was Amin Roy basically. Amin Roy, you can put Datta, R.P. Datta view, then you can put Sumit Sarkar view, Bipin Chandra, but two are the more important, R.P. Datta and Amin Roy. What R.P. Datta talks about, that Indian national movement was led by a national bourgeois, right, a bourgeois movement, right. So the leaders who were bourgeois not only neglected the voice of the masses, but even sometimes they ditched, right. And the Amin Roy, who talks about the Indian national movement, was constituted by the three classes: one upper middle class, second petty or small middle class, and third was peasant and workers. The upper two class interest was different from the third class, the peasant and workers. So the in the national movement, which leadership was provided by Gandhi, served the interest of only the upper middle class and smaller middle class and petty intellectuals, and they left the peasants and workers on their own. So that is the Marxist perspective. Now the fifth question is underline the significance of the first constitutional amendment. And you know, the first constitutional amendment was very important. It was it came in 1951. Why it came? It came because the Patna High Court struck down the land reform. The land reform movement, which intended to establish equality, right, to give land to the landless. And since the right to property was there in the fundamental right, Article 31, and it was a right to property, the Bihar Land Reform Act was struck down on the basis of that it is a fundamental right, you cannot snatch it. Now the parliament made first constitutional amendment in 1951, and it included ninth schedule. Ninth schedule, right? And what was the ninth schedule? Ninth schedule, any law which has been put in the ninth schedule is out of the judicial purview, from the judicial review of the judiciary, right? So if you see the many things, many law, including various land reform law, has been put in the ninth schedule. Secondly, it was not only that, it was also included Article 16 Clause 4, which did a special provision for the socially and educationally disadvantaged groups. Thirdly, it also did amendment in Article 19, freedom of speech and expression. So if you look at in Article 19, there are six freedoms, and there are reasonable restrictions. So the first amendment made more restrictions, put some more restrictions on Article 19, and that was the significant move in the first constitutional amendment, right? I hope it is clear. Now come to the question number 6A. It goes like this: constitutionally reconciling the fundamental rights with the directive principle of a state policy has led to frequent amendments of the constitution and judicial intervention. Now, if you look at the question, is the fifth E and 6A very much related to, right? Now, if you see the fundamental right, which was protected, it is a judicially enforceable, and Article 13 Clause 2 says that any law inconsistent with the fundamental right shall be declared null and void, right? And this is the provision through which the Supreme Court trying to intervene. Now again, there was Article 31, right, right to property. Now the fundamental right, which is judicially enforceable, right, so through Article 32, at the same time the constitution makers also made a provision of DPSP, right? So in DPSP, that DPSP declared India as a welfare state, India as a developmental state. How India can establish itself as a developmental state? Only through distribution and redistribution. Now if you look at the Indian state since its inception, 1951, right, and it tried to give various rights to the people, especially right to the tiller, land reform, and which went against Article 32, and that was the difference that emerged between the judiciary and the parliament, and there was a conflict on fundamental right and DPSP. But the First Amendment Act reduced this conflict because they created ninth schedule. Now if you look at the Indian judiciary 1950 to 1967 or 1969, during this period it is called a period of harmony between the judiciary and parliament related to fundamental rights and directive principle. So during this period, Supreme Court in Sajjan Singh case argued that the Parliament has authority to amend any provision of the Constitution, fundamental right and DPSP, anything. But in 1969, in Golaknath case, Supreme Court said the Parliament can amend the Constitution, but it cannot touch the fundamental right. It has no authority to do that, right? And the Supreme Court also mentioned there is a priority of the fundamental right over the DPSP, right? And this was resolved. This was given so much of amendment, constitutional amendment in the made by the Parliament. This was resolved in 1973 in Keshwanand Bharti case, when the Parliament, the Supreme Court argued that the Parliament can amend the Indian Constitution, including fundamental right, but it cannot damage the basic structure. Now, if you see the 1973, it established a constitutional supremacy in Indian, but at the same time, Supreme Court said there should be harmony. There should be harmony between the fundamental rights and DPSP, especially in Minerva Mills case, right? Both the fundamental right and DPSP are complementary to each other. They are not conflictual. They are complementary to each other, right? So that is the major story regarding DPSP and fundamental rights and judiciary and the Parliament, right? It was a little complex question. It was not so simple one, right? But I hope it is clear to you. Now come to the 6B. The question is, the role of the President of India becomes more significant during a minority government and coalition government. Explain. If you see the role of the President, right, the President act on advice of the Council of Ministers. So Article 53 says the President is head of the executive, union executive, and shall exercise his authority directly or by him under, with the help of subordinate officers. But if you see the Article 74, which says there shall be a Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister to aid and advise the President, right? And then Article 75, it says, the Prime Minister shall be appointed by the President, right? And 75 clause 3, which says that the Council of Ministers shall be collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. So when you see the Indian democracy from 1950 to till 2021, there was a one-party governance, right? One-party dominance, and there the President has no options but only to appoint, Prime Minister. President has to appoint Prime Minister of the majority party or the majority party. But when there is a hung assembly, since 1990 there was a hung assembly, right? And during the hung assembly there is no majority of any party, then the President role become very important, right? President role become very important, and President is here can exercise discretionary power. Discretionary power, it means President can invite any political party to form the government. He can appoint any person, any political party leaders as a Prime Minister, and then tell them to secure the confidence in the floor of the House, right? So during the coalition government from 1990 to till now, but before till 1999 it was relevant. But if you look at after 99, it was a bipolar coalition, and it is a huge coalition. Like UPA, it was a huge coalition. Similarly, NDA, it is a huge coalition. So in terms of when there is a coalition government, in terms of minority, when they don't have full support in the house of the Lok Sabha, then there was a role of the president was very critical. If you look at the history of the president, then it was Neelam Sanjeeva Reddy who invited Charan Singh to form the government. Right? Similarly, when the Gyani Jail Singh, when the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi died, then Gyani Jail Singh used his discretionary power to appoint Rajiv Gandhi as a Prime Minister. Right? So during hung parliament, that means minority government or coalition government, the role of the president become very little discretionary. Otherwise, role of the president is very much very much dependent on the council of minister. As in the Shamsher Singh case, the Supreme Court had argued that the president has to follow the aid and advice of the council of minister, but he can send his any advice to the council of minister to reconsider. But if council of minister again send same the advice, the president has to follow. So that is the thing. Now come to the next question. Do you think that despite having significant limitations, the Panchayat Raj institution have strengthened the process of democratic decentralization? Give your view. So if you look at the functioning of the Panchayati Raj system in India, especially 73rd and 74th amendment, it is a very much important, right? Very much important. What 73rd amendment did to the Panchayati Raj? Basically, it it had given constitutional recognition to the Panchayati Raj, right? And it established Gram Sabha as a nodal body, and then it secured representation of vulnerable community like SC, ST and women. Now, the Panchayati Raj after 73rd amendment has become more democratic. Why more democratic? If you look at the elected representative in the Panchayati Raj in India, there are more than 27 lakh. There are more than 27 lakh representative, and out of 27 lakh representative, 40% are women, right? More than 16% are from SC, and more than 10% are ST, right? And if you look at the performance of the Panchayati Raj, it has done well, right? There are several cases, there are several examples in the Panchayat which did well, but at the same time there are many limitations. There are many limitations that patriarchy is there, the caste system is there, right? And there are lack of information that is associated with the Panchayati Raj. Even then, the Panchayati Raj system has played a very important role in democratic decentralization. Now, if you look at women participation in the Panchayati Raj, it is approximately many states, out of 20 states, 50% women representation has been secured. Why? Because there was more demand from the Panchayati Raj movement, right? Many scholars called Panchayati Raj as silent revolution in India. Why it is silent revolution in India? Because it is a right to self-govern, right? And there are many community which were marginalized, which were neglected, which were never considered as important. Now at least they are considered as very important in democratic and political process of India, and which is women, SC and ST, right? So it is really strengthened the democratic decentralization in India, right? So that is the point that we have to make. Now come to the next question, 7th A. It goes like this: Indian party system is shaped by a complex interaction of the countries federal structure, electoral system, and social cleavages, right? Again, this question is little, twisted, little complex. Now it is asking about your Indian party system, right? It is asking you Indian party system. Now it says Indian party system has shaped by the complex interaction of three things. One is federalism, second is electoral system, and third is social cleavages, right? So on the basis of this federal, electoral, and social cleavages, you have to just answer the Indian party system that was evolved in the last 70 years in India. Now if you look at the 1950 to 1967, which is called one party dominance period, right? The Congress dominated the entire scenario of Indian party system. It was one party system, as Rajini Kothari has put. But at the same time, here you see the Kerala, you see the Tamil Nadu, and you see the Jammu and Kashmir, J&K, where the regional party, National Conference in Kerala, LDF in Tamil Nadu, DMK was very important. And this Tamil Nadu or Kerala and J&K, even Akali Dal in Punjab, right? They were very important in relation to the federal structure, and they were demanding more autonomy. If you look at Rajamannar Committee, right, and that demanded more autonomy in terms of finance, in terms of political. If you see the Punjab, Sahib resolution, right, that was passed by the Punjab, and it demanded that the complete political autonomy for the state, right? And if you look at the Tamil Nadu Rajamannar Committee, if you look at the Jammu Kashmir, where National Conference demanded more autonomy from the center. So the political party system, although it was dominated by one party system, and that Congress was very dominant, although the smaller party like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Jammu and Kashmir, and Punjab, various political party demanded more autonomy, right? Now if you see the electoral system, now come to the article from 1968 to 1980, where the many regional party grew up, many regional party came up, and that regional party came up due to the social cleavages, right? For example, SP, Samajwadi Party, and Bahujan Samaj Party in UP, then Janata Dal, RJD in Bihar, then Assam Gan Parishad in Assam, then Anti-Rama Rao political party, then many political party came, and that came due to the social cleavage. It was a caste-based party, it was a regional party, right? And if you look at 1990, since 1990, again, if you see the party system in India till 2021, right, it was basically based on the social cleavages. But if you see the social cleavages along the line of religion, right, so see the right-wing party, there is a rise of right-wing party, the BJP, right? Now if you look at the electoral system in the entire, we have opted, FPTP system, first past post the system, FPTP system. And that FPTP system is not only opted by India, it is opted by the all post-colonial state which was governed by the British. It is there in British and US also. If you see the FPTP, first past post the system, in this system only the person who secured maximum votes declared winner, right? So in this all period, the party competed each other, and those candidate who secured the greater vote won the election, right? And in this way the many regional party become very dominant, and that was based on like social cleavages. Like if you see the caste parties in India, if you see the regional, other parties in India, like DMK, AIDMK, Anti-Rama Rao party, then right. So this was the entire thing that this question demands very carefully explanation. Right. Now we will move to the next question. We will move to the next question. Do you think that there has been a gradual shift in the basis on which the demands for the creation of new state have been raised in different regions of India? Do you think that there has been a gradual shift in the basis on which the demands of the creation of new state have been raised in different regions of India? If you look at the reorganization of state in India, right, it was basically first time constituted on the basis of administrative efficiency, right? But after the State Organization Act 1956, the state was organized on the basis of language, right? Like Andhra Pradesh, like Tamil Nadu, like Maharashtra, like Haryana, like Punjab. Many states were created on the basis of language. So language, cultural homogeneity, these were the basic criteria on which that was the creation of new state, right, till 2000, from 1950 to 2000. But if you look at the three states, in 2000 three states was created. One was Jharkhand, second was Chhattisgarh, and third was Uttarakhand. If you look at these three states, the demand of creation of new state was not on the basis of language. It was a basis of a sense of internal colonialism. What is Majid Akhtar? So first was on the basis of language congruity, on the basis of language. Secondly, after 2019, from 2000 to 2021, come to 2000 to 2021. Now this demand was on the basis of language, and still there are few region this demand persists, like Mithilanchal, right? But if you look at from 2000 to 2001, the demand is not on the basis of language, right? For example, at Andhra Pradesh, all over the Telugu speaking area, or Bihar, where the Jharkhand, Bihar both spoke the same language, or Uttarakhand and UP both spoke the same language. What was the new basis? New basis was that in particular state, a particular area of people, or particular people of the particular area command the major resources, and the major resources invested in that period, that part, and consequently the certain other part remain very backward, right? And that is the theory of in what Majid Akhtar talks about internal colonialism, right? So there was a leader from the Telangana who used to say, or there was a leader of Chhattisgarh or the leader of Jharkhand, this used to say that only particular, like in case of Jharkhand, it used to say that all resource belongs to Jharkhand. Jharkhand is rich in the resources, but all fruits are enjoyed by the Bihar. Why? You are extracting all the resources from Jharkhand, but you are developing only the southern, northern part of the territory, and southern part remain underdeveloped. Similar argument was for the creation of Telangana, where the leaders of Telangana said, we are remain backwardness, right? And similarly, this Uttaranchal, right? Uttarakhand, the leader demanded that we are remain backward, right? Or the Chhattisgarh leaders, they demanded also that. So here the case is internal colonialism, or the sense of backwardness. for the particular region. So for example, if you see the Vidarbha, there is a demand of state in Vidarbha. Or for example, if you see in Gujarat, there is Saurashtra region where there is a separate demand for Saurashtra, right? If you see the Gorkha land, speak the same language, Bengali, but the Gorkha land demanding a separate state because a sense of backwardness, so they demand a separate state so that we can develop ourselves better. So that is the thing. Now, here the question is 7C, and it talks about what explains India's modest improvement in social development outcomes as the rate of growth has accelerated since the initiation of economic reform. Now, if you see the social development outcome from the 1990, right, it's asking since the initiation of economic reform. So, economic reform has initiated in 1990. India's economy was opened to the world, right? And lots of opportunity has come to India. Lots of business has come to India. Now that was the region the growth has accelerated, right? Before 1990, there was a growth was very much stagnant in India, and that was called, what Rajkrishna called Hindu rate of growth. But the economic reform of 1990, which opened Indian economy, and that also opted many various kinds of reform, like banking reform, like industrial reform, like finance reform, so much of reform, and that accelerated the growth, and it has also created lots of opportunity. Now come to the social development outcome. At the same time, from 1990 there was a lot of demand. Right? What was the demand? Demand for various rights. For example, a right to education, RTE, right? Or for example, a right to forest. So you have a right to forest, FRA, Forest Right Act. Then there was a demand for food. So and at the same time, the government has also formulated lots of policies like Narega, MG Narega, that has given a sense of dignity to the people in rural area, right? And then at the same time there was a RTI Act. These all were the social development outcome, and apart from there, if you talk about, there are approximately 37 central sponsored schemes that government is making and trying to implement it for the social welfare, for the development of India, and at the same time we have accelerated the growth, but still we are lacking behind in the social development, right? Why lacking behind? Because in India, growth is focused, and it is believed that growth will trickle down, but it is it is observed that growth is not trickling down, and divide is growing, right? So there are people, scholars and politicians also talk about two India and Bharat, right? So rural India and urban India. It's not only that kind of divide. Even within the urban India, there are lots of divide between who has and who has not, right? So that is the issue, and that we should write in this for this answer. The last question, which is 8, which has 3 sub questions that we need to discuss. The last question, now the question A says the success of electoral democracy can partly be attributed to the status and role of the Election Commission of India. Here simple, it is asking question, the role of Election Commission of India. So if you put the role of Election Commission of India, you have to give lots of constitutional article like Article 324, and then if you see the Election Commission, it was a unique kind of institution which was established in India. It is not available in the US, let me tell you. And Election Commission, first time it conducted election from 1951, October or November 1951 to February or March 1952, right? And it had established a huge electoral role because India never ever had any example of universal adult franchise, right? So the Election Commission, since its inception, has prepared the role, and it has faced lots of problems. Even though Election Commission has prepared the entire role, and also it had conducted election not only in the plain of India, it has conducted in Himachal Pradesh, northeastern India, it conducted in even the very much hinterland in India, right? So what there's a one text that called Ornitz, how India has become democratic, written by Ornitz Sahni. The Ornitz Sahni has said that Election Commission has very effective and very efficient institution in terms of success of electoral democracy in India. If you look at the 4 months during which the Election Commission become very active, for the election, it is a very much efficient, right? It try to capture the all malpractices in the election, right? It has succeeded to conduct various free and fair election, right? So every time there is an election in India, every year there are either state election or the central election, state election. Every year you can get 2 or 3 state election. Still UP election is on stage. So Election Commission play a very important role. The another author who wrote on Election Commission in India is Ujjwal Kumar Singh. Ujjwal Kumar Singh talks about Election Commission is a very paradoxical institution in India. It established electoral democracy, but it failed to very much give response to the vulnerable community, because if you look at the functioning of the Election Commission, and if you look at the how Election Commission functions, it has become ineffective beyond the election and before the election, but during election it is very efficient, right? And it is really a very much substantive in electoral democracy in India. But you see the electoral democracy, which is not a democracy at all. Sometimes electoral democracy is called procedural democracy. Although Election Commission has played an important role, right? So first you have to constitutional status of the Election Commission, and then you have to talk about how Election Commission was functioned. Even if you look at, if you can give example of post Godhra riots, when people were displaced, the Election Commission went there and they conducted election peacefully. They made electoral roll. If you look at the Election Commission, if you do the electorate in India, number of electorate in India, it is higher than the entire population of Europe and US combined. So there's a huge population that is managed by the Election Commission of India. So of course, Election Commission of India play a very important role in order to secure success of electoral democracy in India. So that is Election Commission. It was a very straightforward question. Now come to examine the evolution of jurisprudence of the Supreme Court of India as a constitutional court. Now this question was very similar to the it has some resemblance from the previous question. Here it is asking evolution of jurisprudence in India, right, as as a constitutional court. So what is Supreme Court? Supreme Court as an institution of governance, right? It is an institution which is a custodian of Indian Constitution, which is a guardian of Indian Constitution, right? And it has evolved very powerful, right, in Indian democracy, and it has also established itself as an institution of legislation. For example, Vishakha guidelines, right? So they issue guidelines, they controls executive, right, and it becomes a very powerful, right? And the Pratap Bhanu Mehta talked about, Supreme Court has become Supreme Court is facing a crisis. It is a paradoxical institution. At one hand, it is very efficient in some matter, but at same time it is facing lots of crises. What are the crises? Crores of cases are faced by the Indian judiciary, crores of cases. But now come to here, how Supreme Court has played a constitutional role. The first, you have to provide from period 1950 to 1969, in which many cases, there are like Sajjan Singh cases, in which Supreme Court said that the Parliament has power under Article 368 to amend any part of the Indian Constitution, including fundamental right, because constitutional amendment is not a law which is under Article 13 Clause 2. Right? But in Golaknath case in 1969, Supreme Court has terminated the earlier verdict and said that the clause law under Article 13(2) also include constitutional amendment. So now the Parliament has no authority to amend any part of the fundamental rights, right? And that was resolved by the Keshavanand Bharati case, which was a very landmark judgment. If you look at, it was a constitutional court. Keshavanand Bharati was a constitutional court consisting of 13 judges, right? And out of 13 judges, 6 judges says that Parliament has no authority to amend the fundamental right under Article 368, but 6 judges says Parliament has right to amend the Constitution. But one judge, Sikri, who said that Parliament has right to amend any part of the Indian Constitution, including fundamental right and preamble, but it cannot damage or destroy the basic structure. So that here, that was the Constitutional Court. Now, if you say Puttaswamy case in the recent time, right? It was also a Constitutional Court, and where the right to privacy is secured. Right? So from 1969, then 1969 to 1973, and then 1973 to 1990, right? And then from 1990 to 2021, in which the Supreme Court has established itself as a very powerful body, also in terms of constitutional court, and also in terms of the interpreter of the Indian Constitution. So Supreme Court has evolved itself as a powerful jurisprudence, right? So that is the thing that we have to write in for this question. Now come to the last question. Explain how caste as a social category is becoming a political category in democratic politics of India. Very, very important question, and very much related to the current scenario. If you see the caste as a social category, Indian society is divided in various castes, right? But from 1990, or if you go to beyond 1967, caste has played a very important role in mobilizing the people. So for example, first time OBC leaders, mobilized the OBC community, and later on it was SC turn who mobilized the country. And it was said that Indian politics was becoming so caste ridden, right? But Rajini Kothari, in his book Caste in Indian Politics, argued that it is not Indian politics which is a caste ridden, but it is a politicization of the caste, right? It is a politicization of the caste. And you know, the Yogendra Yadav, he said the upsurge of the Bahujan Samajwad Party is as a democratic upsurge, right? So, and there are Kanchan Chandra who talks about the rise of the BSP as a ethnic party who promotes patronage democracy, right? And if you look at from 1990 onwards, the social category of caste has become a political category. Why it is so? Because each caste started consolidating themselves, and on the basis of caste there are lots of caste based party. There are lots of parties like SP, BSP. Even if you see the current situation, the Rajbhar has created its own party. Chandrasekhar Azad has created its own party. Then many leaders have created their own party, and that has become a political category. So it tried to mobilize the people on the caste, and it is a very wide. It's not very wide. Tight water compartment category. No, this political category is a very loose one, right? Because it's not a Yadav party will include to the Yadav only. Yadav is ready to include Agrawal, right? Or Yadav is very ready to include Jatavs, or Jatav is very ready to include in the political category. Mind it, in the political category, but not in the social category. It is very difficult. But in political category, it is becoming very used to in Indian policy, in democratic politics of India. So there are various parties in Uttar Pradesh, in Bihar, in Maharashtra, in Andhra Pradesh, in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu. If you see the PMK, it is a caste-based party. If you see the DMK, it has hold on certain caste. If you see the AIDMK, it has certain hold in the caste. So caste has become very important role in Indian politics. Especially since 1990, it had played a very important role where the social category becomes a political one, and it had started giving voice to on the basis of caste. So you can see the demand for reservation, demand for special representation, demand for welfare schemes, demand for scholarship, demand for several kinds of demand, and that is based on social category, and that penetrating the political domain of democratic politics in India. That you needed to explain. So we had explained. If you have any explanation, any questions, you can put in your comment. I will answer you. Otherwise, I am done with the explanation. All questions I have did briefly, because you need to write briefly, right? You have fixed word to write. And I hope it is clear to you.